back. Newton, it's your friend.
Hi, Newton.
Buddy.
Hi, Newton.
I'm Roxy Sorkin. I directed a film called BREASTMILK that was at NFFTY in 2019, 2020, COVID year. And it wasn't the film that made me like start loving filmmaking, but it was the film that like wanting to make movies, and that was Lady Bird, like had a big impact on me, and just like the structure and how feminine it was, and all of that was really important to me, and it like showed me that somebody who thinks like I do can make movies and like have people love it, where it's like about, you know, it could be like about sex or about relationships with a mother, like that kind of thing. What about you?
Hi, I'm Kim Tran, and I was also at NFFTY during that, I guess it was like 2020, the pandemic year. And the first, I don't think there's a first project that made me fall in love with filmmaking. For me, I've always loved TV, and then that got me into comedy. Like I've always loved comedy, specifically like sitcoms. And then that got me into like making, you know, just like little shorts here and there. And I like to make like digital shorts, but then I also like digital sketches, but then I also was like, oh, here's another way where it's like, you know, there's like a story and you can get to live with the character more and have more, like go more on a journey, have different emotions rather than just like the ha 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 of a digital sketch. So that's how I got into it.
Okay.
What was a resource that you used when creating this film?
So the year before was at NFFTY. I was there with a music video, and I saw a ton of amazing films. Like two of the films that I saw that like stuck out to me is I saw a film called Virgin Sita, and I think that the other film was called Open. Yeah, Open. And there were two films one was about like a mother and like a girl who hurts herself masturbating, and it's like about her mom kind of, and then the other one's about like the trials and tribulations of birth, which it was like a horror about birth. And both those movies I was like, wow, like also like really high production value, like just really amazing filmmaking and storytelling, and it really inspired me to like get cooking and start writing and like set out to make something a little bit higher value.
Had you been making films before BREASTMILK?
Yeah, I went to a film high school actually. Like my major in high school was cinematic arts. And we had to make a ton of different movies in high school, but like, and I had made a ton of like music videos and like shorts, but like, so I made a lot of stuff, but BREASTMILK was the first thing like with a substantial budget that I ever made.
I would say the same for me in terms of that. Like I had done, you know, like digital sketches and shorts before. And I had made another short I really loved, but it was through a class. And so this one I feel like was the first one where I was like, I didn't have a structure. It was me being like, I really want to make this, and I really need to like self-discipline and make it. And then also I had like, I was in grad school at the time. At that time, they were giving out like summer grants. Like my grad program was giving them out to like students in the program. So I was like, okay, I'm going to apply this and use it as a way to kick my butt. Mm-hmm. And like make the short film. I guess that would be my answer. Like kind of using the structure of the MFA program in terms of like I had a summer off, and also I knew like each student could apply for this grant and get it to use whatever they wanted towards, like whether it was development of a play or, you know, to travel to a conference. And for me, I was like, I'm gonna use it to make a short film, and now like it's kicking my butt, and now I have to do it. When you're writing a screenplay, how do you find the balance between lighter / comedic moments and tense / emotional ones?
When I'm writing, my normal like writing style is that it's like dramatic topic / like dramatic setting with comedic dialogue. That's like my happy place, is like writing jokes over like a darker setting. And when I was little, like my dad was like, the only way you can make people cry is if you make them laugh first. So I always think about that when I'm writing. So that stuck with me for sure. When I'm like directing, when it's actually happening, I like to like clear out set. If it's a, you know, more emotional moment, I'll have people step out so that it's just like bare bones, so that the actors can really let loose and like feel that moment. And generally I would just like give the actors some space and be like, you know, take your time, however long you need, come back and be ready. Mm-hmm. And it works out. I've been lucky enough to work with some really great talent. So
yeah, when you clear the room out, it's just you and maybe like the DP and the sound person, and then everyone else is
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Or like the second AC, you know, or like some other runner. But like, I mean, in BREASTMILK, there is that scene that's like the like breakdown scene.
I was gonna bring up that scene. I was like, is that scene one of the 3 you're talking about?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, your film had a ton of really intense, it's like one big, long, intense scene. So like, what's your take on that?
For us, it's not in the short film. Like an earlier draft had a scene where the boyfriend comes back in, and I kind of like have a talk with him, and then through editing we were like, oh, it feels too long now, like it feels right to cut right here. But when we did have that scene, it was like I had to get to a very like emotional sad place before, because we were like, it was like at the her mom just leaving, and then he had to come in, and that was where we had cut, and so we had to like start from a very like hard place for me as an actor. And also the apartment was very small, so it was like no one was in the room that didn't need to be in the room. And then also what we would do is like the DP would roll the camera as I was like emotionally prepping, and then I would just start it without saying action, and then we would just tail slate.
That's cool. That's really interesting, actually.
It was like a nice way to get into it. I will say, like, as the actors, sometimes in that moment I did feel like, oh my god, we're rolling this for so long and I'm still not there emotionally yet. But I feel like for where we were at that point in the production, I was like, I felt like it was the best way. But I'd be curious to see what other ways there are.
So this is so fucking specific. How did you guys do the haircut? You just cut your fucking hair.
I cut my fucking hair, and in the movie my hair is like in a like half ponytail, and I didn't realize this, but when you cut a half ponytail, the hair right here will be like this short, and the hair right here will be like still this long. And so we were like, it's a one take, and you know, like we prepped for the one take, we did the one take, and then we see the one take after the hair is cut, it falls back down, and it doesn't look like my hair is cut at all because the front of the hair. So what we did was another take where she also cut again, and then it looked better, but it still wasn't the dramatic thing. So what you see in the final film is you see the first, like the original one take, but then it cuts to like another take where at that point the production designer had like chopped up my hair more to make it look like it had been chopped up. So that was like one of the interesting things, was like, she just chopped my hair and it looks like it hasn't been chopped at all because of the layers of hair and how hair is placed around the head.
What made you decide, like, also, like, did you just like keep that haircut after that? Did you shave your head? Like, what did you do?
Oh my gosh, so I have shaved my head in the past. I've had a mohawk. That was like halfway through college, and so I've gone through the pains of growing that back. So what I did was I kind of like cut it myself. Like, you see what happens in the film, and then after that I go back home like in real life, and I'm just like, I'll just try this. I'm not a hair cutter. It turned out bad. And then I went to the hair salon, and they're like, okay, I was like, I'm just gonna wear my hair half up like this for now, like permanently. Can you just try and fix whatever this? And I just had really ugly hair for like a year, and then eventually it grew. The short part grew out.
So cool that you went like so bold with it. Like, you just like fully committed.
For me, I like comedy. Like, I specifically got into writing and filmmaking and stuff because I just always wanted to do comedy. And then, but the interesting thing is, like, oh, you can, now that it's not like just, you know, a digital sketch, you can add other elements. So for me, when I'm making short films, it's all about feeling grounded. I think that's just the style I've made so far. Of course, I'm open to other styles and want to try other styles, but it grounded. And so finding like the natural humor from that. And then in the short, I kind of felt like I needed to be a little darker because it was dealing with like intense themes, and it felt like the dark sort of grounded it in a way that felt right. I love navigating between like dark, serious, and then you find the humor, because I feel like that's how real life is, you know, like people who are going through bad things, they still like laugh at random moments, or like sometimes that even makes like the small funny moments even funnier for some reason. What's your casting process like, and how do you develop chemistry among your actors?
Interesting. So my first film, BREASTMILK, I literally just like gave the role to Adina because I was like, don't read or anything, like you got it. I went to high school with her. She was a theater major at my high school and she's amazing. So at that film, I was not as like, I didn't have a process. Like I had people in mind and I kind of, was like, if you want to do this, like, let's do this, which isn't necessarily like how I'd go about it now, just because my last film, I cast one actress, but I'd seen a ton of her work. And then I did like chemistry reads and meets for like the other main actress in it. And then I cast somebody and she ended up being so good. So like, I think sometimes like no matter how you do it, it works. Like you can figure it out. But I also like the people that I work with have a ton of different ways of doing it. Like we go on backstage sometimes. The grandmother in the film I just made, I literally didn't audition her at all. I found her on backstage and I saw a picture of her and I was like, it has to be you. There's like literally no other way this movie can be made. And then it was her. So, trust your instinct is like my thing.
Yeah. I feel like the first way you're talking about where like you usually like cast people you've worked with before, or like, oh, this role is like actually written for you or something. It has been my sort of thing, mainly because like my projects have been really tiny, like indie, almost no budget things. So it's like, yeah, I'm just going to use the resources I have with regards to like the location and like my friend who's a DP and she, has her camera, and like my friend who I lived in a co-op with and he does sound now. Like I think that applies to actors too, where I'm like, I know these performers, I know what their strengths are and what they would like shine at. What is the best piece of advice you've received related to filmmaking?
This isn't advice. I feel like this is just like a general like turn of phrase, but just like make shit. Literally doesn't matter if it's bad. It literally doesn't matter. Just keep making things. Like, and then send them to people and have people watch them. Cold email people, send people things.
Yeah.
Submit to film festivals. Somebody's gonna like it, And like,
for sure.
Just the more you make, the more you learn, the more you do. So that's definitely the most important, like always forward, never still thing for me.
I'll definitely second that. And then for me, like growing up and never knowing about filmmaking and like not knowing anyone did it, I was like, it just seems like a whole other world, a whole other barrier. But like one thing that I heard that like I was really like, oh, like this is accessible to people like me, was like who cares if it looks crappy? Like who cares about production design as long as you have like strong story and strong character. And it's like, it's all about like the characters in the story, and like people will like that. And so for me, that's sort of been like my kind of like guiding thing in terms of like, especially like not having a budget or not doing like, like not having this or that, because you'll never have that even when you'll never have like everything you ever want, even when you're at the highest level. So like just have fun with like essentially like the writing of it, because I feel like the writing of it is so key to before doing anything else.